Learning how to work on my car has not been easy. Right now I'm getting ready to install a supercharger kit that I actually bought with insurance money for my wreck last year on my high mileage car. So before I actually do that, I need to test if the engine is actually healthy enough to support that increased amount of power, but just about everything went wrong. And this is also my first time doing this. I've watched plenty of YouTube videos, so I'm still kind of learning as I'm going. So we'll see how it goes. So I'm sure most of you all are familiar with this, but just in case, the whole point of supercharging, or the way that it works, is that I'm going to be using forced induction, forcing more air into the engine than it otherwise would naturally breathe in. And in pulling in that extra air, you can then give it more fuel and then make more power. But the thing is, you're simply stressing your engine more. And so before I do that, I want to test the engine, specifically do a compression test to make sure that my high mileage car is not already somewhat worn out. Because if it for some reason has bad compression, that means the engine block itself is not really holding the compressed air completely when it's running. And forcing in even more air and making more power with that is just probably gonna lead to a catastrophe. So I need to do that today. And you may be kind of wondering at this point, why didn't I test the engine last year before I bought the supercharger kit? And the answer is that I was too anxious to find out the answer. But I simply just can't put it off any longer because I have to do it before I do any real engine work. Otherwise, all the work I put into the engine or the supercharger install could just be wasted. I just got a little scared when I pulled out these spark plugs. A lot of these threads were pretty wet with oil, which I was quite concerned to see. But it's not the actual electrode, the tip that's wet, just the threads. From what I understand, it's probably because of my leaking valve cover gasket that I replaced last year, probably residual oil from that. So I'm kind of hoping that's what that was. So with the spark plugs and ignition coils pulled out, I was ready to start the test. I guess here goes nothing. But it wasn't looking good at all. Okay, cylinder one. I'm pretty stressed. The first try wasn't good, so a little nervous, but And this was incredibly concerning to see. It's still like 110. Oh no. Oh no. So I went ahead and I tested all the rest of the cylinders, and they all returned about the same low number. Something was seriously wrong here, and I wasn't sure what to do. Okay, numbers are kind of low, actually pretty low. So all the cylinders are around 110, 120. So nothing crazy uneven, but pretty low. Ideally it should be, I think, at around 160 minimum, but 180 PSI or higher ideally. There is one thing I want to double check before I go full on panic, is that you're supposed to do this at the full operating temperature. And I warmed up the engine before this, but because it took me a while to get set up, it's been probably almost 45 minutes to an hour since it actually last ran. So there's a good chance that that could be it. And because there's not a single cylinder that's substantially lower than the rest, but instead they're all like 40 PSI, 50 PSI lower than they should be, I'm hoping that's it. So I'm gonna put everything back together, take it on a quick drive, and see how it is. So I tried my best to be cautiously optimistic and not overthink it until I had properly tested it in the correct condition. And unfortunately, it was the exact same situation. All the cylinders were showing a massive loss in compression. So I tried doing a wet test, which is where you pour some oil in the cylinder to help seal it up. And if it's higher here, which it wasn't, it would have meant that the piston rings are what's worn out. But since that didn't make a difference, it was looking like I probably had worn out valves or leaking valves, which means I probably need to do an engine rebuild, which is quite a lot of work.
So I tried not to panic too much as I started researching what could possibly be wrong that could explain the low compression I was seeing, because I really didn't want to have to do an engine rebuild. So after doing some research and calling around for some advice, I realized that maybe it wasn't time to panic just yet, and that there could be an issue with the actual reading. So I looked up and got some information about a couple things I could do to verify that that reading was actually accurate before I actually panicked and started planning out a possible engine rebuild. So it gave me some hope in the moment, but you never know.
It was really starting to look like my car is low on compression, which would mean that it's pretty unhealthy and not really ready to be supercharged. And so I started looking into it, and it seemed like it might need a valve job, which basically means the top half of the engine has to be removed and sent off to a machine shop, and that costs money and it would be a lot of effort to do. And I did my best research. It looked like it has to be the valves are not sealing well. But I came across a Reddit comment that pointed something interesting out, that the compression tester, this thing right here, that the threads of it are supposed to be the same depth as the threads of the spark plug. And here's the thing, it's not. It only has about 3 or 4 threads there, but the spark plug has, I don't know, maybe like 10. And I thought about it and I realized this kit came with a thread adapter, and this isn't a different size of threads. This is just like, what do they call it? Deep adapter. That thing. So it got me thinking about this adapter, and then look what happens when you put it next to a spark plug. The threads are very similar in depth, not perfect, but nothing like just the 4 or 3 on here. So this adds a lot more depth back, and apparently it makes a pretty big difference for compression tests, in giving a artificially low reading, because you're supposed to read the compression at the same level as the spark plug. Apparently that's essentially artificially making the compression chamber larger. And on a smaller engine like the Miata 1.8 liter, that effect is magnified because the percentage of how bigger you made it. Essentially, I didn't use the adapter I'm supposed to, so there's still hope. It's not done yet. There might be a shot, there might be a chance here. So I'm gonna do a quick test just with a cold engine. So I'm hoping this is it. I'm gonna hand screw this into the engine, but you have to hand screw it out, and I don't want this to get stuck in the engine. All right, I'm gonna see if the adapter made the difference.
So it's time to do a retest with that. And this was the result.
God dang it.
Nothing had changed.
Still reading about 90, so I'm not sure. Fuck.
But I wanted to know for sure.
Okay, so it's the next morning, and I spent all night kind of panicking and researching, and just to summarize where I'm at. Yesterday, just about everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. The engine wasn't at proper operating temperature the first time, so I redid the test. Then I tried to do the wet test, but I think I did the wet test wrong, so I had to re-warm up the engine and do it again. Then I realized that I think I'm supposed to be using the longer thread adapter. So then I had to re-warm the engine again and then test it out. And after all of that, I realized that I think the testing gauge was not even working correctly. Because when I started rewatching videos online, I realized that the gauge shouldn't drop to 0 between every crank. It kind of builds up pressure and then holds pressure, and then you can read that. And that wasn't happening for me. It was hitting a number around 110, 120, and then going back to 0 between each crank. So it wasn't building up pressure correctly. So what I have done that's the one from AutoZone. This morning I went and I got one from O'Reilly's, a totally different one, and I'm hoping that works. I spent literally the whole evening researching engine rebuilds because it was starting to really look like I have some pretty bad wear that I need to address. I really am shocked that a compression test, which is supposed to be pretty dead simple, is becoming a whole headache. But I guess that's what happens when you don't know what you're doing. Got the adapter on. I'm gonna do a quick test before I put everything back together just to check the gauge is holding pressure the way it's supposed to. If that's working, I'm going to put everything back together, take a drive, warm up the engine, and do a proper and final dry and wet test so that I have some concrete numbers to work with.
I was feeling pretty hopeful that this would be it. Until I saw this. It was literally not registering any compression at all.
Why is it not working? So here's the deal. I've got about 100 PSI loaded up in this air compressor. When I tested these two valves, AutoZone O'Reilly's, they held pressure perfectly fine. But I'm starting to suspect the hose is bad because watch what happens here. On the AutoZone one, when I connect the 100 or so PSI directly to the hose, I'm holding it and then I let go. It seems like the hose is letting go of the air when it shouldn't be. There you go. And then compare that to O'Reilly's. Check this out. It doesn't even do a thing. That's it right there. It goes up like 20 PSI maybe, but I'm loading almost 100. Both of these hoses are bad for two completely different reasons. I'm going insane. I'm actually like starting to go insane about this. I think I might have got it working, and at this point I'm losing my mind. For fun, I swapped the hose, and guess what? This AutoZone gauge with the O'Reilly's hose is the one combination in which it actually holds pressure. So I think it might work. And I don't know why. And at this point, I don't care. So I'm gonna do a quick cold test with a single cylinder just to see if that's actually working. My God, this has become so complicated.
But honestly, I kind of figured that this wasn't going to work correctly. And sure enough, it showed even lower reading than before.
It's not particularly good. All right, I bought a brand new one off Amazon just to double check. And I'm gonna measure the exact same cylinder again, cold, and see what we got.
So I finally got this result, which was such an incredible relief.
Oh, would you look at that? Oh my God. That's good, that's good. Oh my God. It's nothing definitive, this is just a little sign, but I did a compression test with a brand new tester with a completely cold engine, and I'm already getting 185, almost 190. So that's huge. And weirdly enough, I had just used the AutoZone gauge on that exact same cylinder just a minute ago, and that had 60 PSI, which is so bad if that's true. Why are cars so painful? If anyone's watching this and about to do a compression test, buy a new one. Do not get a used one as a loaner. It's just, I've wasted a whole day and gone through a lot of stress because you don't want to use a potentially unreliable tool to figure out if your engine health is good or not. For something that can have such an emotional toll, at least for me, it's so not worth it.
So now, confident that this tester actually works, I reassembled everything so I can take the car back on a drive to get the final warm readings. And that's when this happened. The car completely struggled to idle and was rattling awfully. I had no clue what could have actually caused something to go wrong because I really hadn't even done much to it. I was just trying to test it. So this started really giving me some anxiety that I must have messed something up. That too, after 2 days of struggling to test the engine and fearing for the worst, I thought I was finally done and ready to test a possibly healthy engine. Only for something to have now gone wrong with the engine? while I was testing it, I didn't know what to make of this, and it honestly made me really anxious. So I didn't really know what to do, so I took out the spark plugs and inspected them, and it seemed like they might have some oil on the tip from the wet compression test, so I cleaned them, and that seemed to have got it working okay. But I still wasn't confident that I was in the clear anymore after how this whole fiasco has gone. So I was still very much on edge, going about the test drive and trying to actually finally get it tested. And after everything I went through in the last 2 days, I was almost scared to even see the reading, because what if the engine is not healthy? I don't know if I have it in me to keep dealing with this and go through these ups and downs. But there was only one thing left to do. And I was amazed to find that all the cylinders were perfectly healthy.
Well, it's been 2 days that I've been trying to do this stupid test. And at the end of it all, my engine was perfectly fine, which I'm glad. But, you know, I had to be safe. It has 226,000 miles on it, but still, cars are a pain sometimes. That stressed me out a bit too much, but yeah, here's the final number. I also ended up just not doing the wet test because that check engine light kind of freaked me out. But yeah, 170 PSI across the first 3 cylinders and 190 on the last, which kind of surprised I got 190 on the last, but not bad for a car with 226,000 miles and 7 previous owners. I really don't know what this car has been through before, but I am really glad that the engine's fine, because I already bought the supercharger kit months ago. So that's gonna come soon. Before that, I'm gonna actually get going with, I got my welder set up. So I'm gonna get going with welding the patch panel on and kind of getting that mostly done. And eventually I'm going to get ready to pull the engine and do a reseal and then put the new stronger clutch and flywheel on. So thanks for sticking with me. I hope you got something out of this. I don't know what I got out of it. I guess my one lesson I would give is if you really need to use a pretty critical diagnostic tool, just buy a new one, unless it's like crazy expensive, because the lack of confidence trying to test something important with something that is, it's just so not worth it. So yeah, we got a lot more coming soon, and I know it's been quite a bit since my last few videos, but it's been a tough year. But I'm finally getting back into it, and I'm really hoping to make some significant progress in the next couple of months. So stick around for that, subscribe if you want to see more, and you can support the channel with the Patreon, linked below. So thank you, and I'll see you next one.